Hey everyone, it's Lexie. So in today's video I'll be sharing with you the books that I would like to reread in 2020. So I feel like over the years I've gotten better at rereading books and just getting better at kind of revisiting some of my favorites. And there was a time last year me and my aunt read the Lilac Girls by Martha Hall Kelly, and that was a book that I read during my master's, and I really enjoyed the book, and I guess I just forgot about it. It just got put on the shelf and I forgot about it, and then I forgot when it was a reread for me when we were reading it together. I was like, oh my god, like I forgot how much I love this book. So this is what I'm hoping to get with these. Some of these are some of my favorites that I have not forgotten about, fortunately, but these are ones that I definitely would like to kind of revisit this year. So without further ado, let's get started. So starting out, this is a book that I read in October of 2016. So I feel like this is a good time for me to pick it up because I remember some of the details but not all of them, and I feel like this one would be perfect to read around Halloween. And it is The Bone Garden by Tess Gerritsen. So this is a kind of a dual storyline. So it takes place in modern day where this woman has moved into a house from that was built in the mid 1800s, and when she's kind of doing some work in the garden she discovers a skeleton that's under her rose bed, and that kind of leads to some questions about who this house belonged to. So then we kind of flash back to the mid 1800s where we follow Rose, who is whose sister just died during childbirth, so she is kind of left taking care of her niece. And while this is all going on, there's been a string of murders that no one knows really like who's done it, and she kind of crossed paths with a medical student and their fates kind of become intertwined. But it was just really dark and eerie, and I really loved the world in here. Like I could totally picture Boston during this time where it's like dark and foggy with like the candlelit like street lights. Like that was like how I totally pictured it. I love the kind of the dual storyline very much makes the plot flow very well, and I just loved it. It was totally creepy and definitely one I will be picking up around the Halloween season. So next, this is a book that I read in, I want to say, September of 2018, and this is a book that really helped me get through. My grandmother just passed away, and this was a book that totally kind of helped me cope with that because I could just get away from reality for a few hours reading it. So it was very much, this book is near and dear to my heart, and I want to reread it again and just revisit these characters, and it is The Alice Network by Kate Quinn. And basically the premise of this, it follows two women's storylines that become intertwined. We follow Eve, who was a spy during World War I, and then we also follow Charlie, who is pregnant, and she lives in America, and her parents are bringing her to Sweden to kind of get rid of the problem, but she ends up running away when they're in England, and she's determined to find out what happened to her cousin during World War II, and her paths kind of intercross with Eve's, and it kind of goes off from there. But like I said, this book was very much my escape from reality. It was my saving grace, and this book is near and dear to my heart, and it's definitely one I want to reread just because how much I enjoyed these characters. I really loved how the author was very much able to integrate both the World War I and kind of post-World War II storylines and make them flow together and complement each other, and I just loved the relationship that grows between Eve and Charlie in here. It just means so much to me, so I just want to go back and revisit this world. So next, this is a series that me and my friend will be reading, and I reread this duology when the final book came out. I can't talk today. The final book came out last year, so I reread this one. So this will be the third time I've read this, but I still love it nonetheless, and it is the Dance of Thieves duology by Mary E. Pearson, which is the spin-off series to the Remnant Chronicles, which is probably one of my favorite kind of fantasy series, if you could call it that. But yeah, I love this series, and I'm very much excited to read this with my friend, and I probably will pick up on some things that I didn't the first time around, especially with the second book that came out last year. But I really love this. It's basically, I can't really talk about the plot of this one, but it takes place 6 years after the events of the last book in the Remnant Chronicles, and it kind of ties in some of the mysteries that were kind of unsolved at the end of that one. So that's the best I can do, but I love this world. I love this, like, the characters in here. I just really much love, like, Mary E. Pearson's work, and I hope there's a spin-off to this spin-off, because the last one ended on a cliffhanger and I was like, how dare you leave it like that? So we'll see, but I'm excited to reread these as well. So this is a book that I probably will reread in audiobook format. I think this one would be very interesting to read because it is almost a memoir, and it is Becoming by Michelle Obama. I read this when this book first came out a couple years ago, and I loved it. I loved just kind of the motivation I had reading this and learning more about her life. And I feel by listening to the audiobook where she narrates it would also be a really good experience as well. I find like it's one thing to read a memoir, but I feel like listening it to the way that the author intended it to be read, because they're narrating it, I think adds to that reading experience. So this is something that I'm really excited about. I feel like it would be good to kind of, if I'm getting tired of my music going to school, then I could listen to the audiobook. I think would be good. But yeah, like I said, I'm really excited for this one, and I definitely do plan on rereading or re-listening to this book very soon. And finally, this I feel like was the foundational book for the love that I found that I have for historical fiction, and it is one that I hold near and dear to my heart. I read it when it first came out in 2015, and I haven't picked it up since. So I feel like it's been 4 years now, so I can, over 4 years I guess, but almost 5 years. But definitely this would be one that I really want to revisit, especially because there's gonna be a movie I hear coming out about it, so I need to freshen up the cobwebs about what I remember from this book. And it is The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. Like I said, I was like an OG lover of this book before it became popular, because I've read up until this point I may have read 4 or 5 of her other works. So I love this one. I really loved the character's perspective of like the female perspective of war, and I feel like this very much kick-started a lot of the female narrative World War II books that have been coming out since this has been published, and because of the popularity of it. But yeah, I loved this book so much. I loved the character storylines. I remember the ending, but I don't really remember everything in between. I just know that I sobbed when I read this, and it's still one of my favorite books of all time, even though I read it. I remember reading this during my undergrad, waiting for one of my anthro classes to start. Like, I remember reading this out in the hallways. Like, that's how distinct, like, I was so invested in this book. Like, I remember, like, small details about this. So if it was 2015, it would have been either the tail end of my 3rd year or the beginning of my 4th year. I don't know. I would have to check when I read this, but yeah, it's been a while, especially now. A lot has happened since then, and I feel like going into this more as like an adult perspective I think will be interesting as well. So that's it, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments below what some of the books you would like to reread this year and all of that fun stuff. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, and I will see you guys next time. Bye, guys.